All right, let's get right into it. We are going to dissect a moment that I'm willing to bet you know all too well. It's that split second where you say yes, but every single cell in your body is just screaming no. We're going to pull back the curtain on that unwanted agreement and really look at the powerful hidden system that's running the show. I mean, really think about it for a second. That feeling, someone asks you for a favor, for a commitment, for just a little bit of your time. And before you can even check in with yourself, the word is already out of your mouth. It's such a common moment, but man, it feels so deeply personal every single time. You know, the source material just nails this moment with three perfect words. It's reflexive, it happens before you even think. It's polite, of course, because on the surface it's all about keeping the peace. But underneath it all, it's devastating to our own peace of mind. Okay, so let's start right there in that first involuntary moment. This is ground zero for the entire cycle, that reflexive yes. And the scene, it's always so familiar, isn't it? You're at your desk, you're slammed with work. Or maybe you're finally relaxing at a social event. The request comes in and poof, the yes just escapes. It's like a social instinct that completely overrides your own internal alarm system before it even has a chance to go off. So let's talk about what happens next, because that one little word, it doesn't just vanish into thin air. Oh no, it comes with a pretty hefty price tag, and that payment gets slowly drained from your own emotional bank account for hours, sometimes even days afterward. And here's the real kicker. That slow, simmering resentment, it's almost never aimed at the person who asked you for the favor. Nope, it's aimed squarely at yourself. You end up feeling like you're walking this tightrope, just desperately trying to balance everyone else's needs. And the sheer reality of it, well, it's just exhausting. You know, it's so easy to mistake this whole pattern for just being nice. But that's just the mask, isn't it? What's really going on is this deep internal conflict between how people see you on the outside and what's actually churning away on the inside. And this just lays it all out so perfectly. On the surface, the world sees you as agreeable, helpful, nice. But the internal reality, it's resentment, it's exhaustion. And right at the bottom of it all, there's this powerful current of fear. That's the core disconnect we're talking about. So if fear is what's really driving the bus here, what exactly are we so afraid of? Let's get to the very heart of what's building this entire system inside of you. It's honestly the terror of the smallest things. A flicker of disappointment on someone's face, the tiny possibility that their opinion of you might drop, even just for a second. It's that deep gut-level dread of being seen as difficult or unhelpful, or, and this is the big one, just plain unlikable. And the source material just puts it so plainly, so powerfully. This isn't just some minor little worry we have. This fear of rejection has become so big, so influential, that it's literally become the primary architect of your life, designing your choices, your relationships, everything. Okay, so let's reframe this whole thing for a second. If fear is the architect, what kind of building has it made? Well, it turns out it's not a prison. It's more like a fortress, a really complex, well-designed defense system. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because this changes everything. Being a people pleaser isn't some kind of personality flaw. It is a survival mechanism. It's a deeply ingrained strategy your brain developed that says, hey, your safety is directly tied to how useful you are to other people. And it's all designed to keep you from feeling that primal pain of isolation. Think about it. For our ancestors, getting kicked out of the tribe was a death sentence. That fear is baked into our DNA. It's an ancient safety protocol still running on modern hardware. And that right there, that's why the fix isn't as simple as going to some assertiveness training class. This isn't about learning clever scripts or power poses. It's about a much deeper journey. It's about understanding the why. It's about being willing to venture into those quiet shadows of your own mind and see the architecture that fear has so carefully built. So that's where we land. Acknowledging that fear built this system not to hurt you, but to protect you, that's a huge first step. The real question is, now that you know you're the architect, what are you going to choose to build in its place?
You ever have one of those days or weeks where you feel like you're just spinning your wheels? You're putting in the hours, you're trying all the right things, but you're just not moving forward? It is such a frustrating feeling, right? To just feel stuck. Well, what if I told you there's a reason for that feeling? A concept called neural dissonance. And here's the kicker. It has absolutely nothing to do with you not trying hard enough. Let's dive in.
Oh, we've all been there. Someone asks for a favor, something you really don't have the time or energy for, and before you even know what's happening, the word yes just tumbles out of your mouth. And for the rest of the day, you've got this little pit in your stomach, this quiet resentment, and it's not even at them, it's at yourself. You're left wondering, why am I so afraid of just saying no? That feeling? That internal tug of war? That is clue number 1.
You see, this people-pleasing thing, it isn't just some weird personality quirk. It's actually a deep, deep survival instinct. A part of your brain learned a long time ago that being useful, being agreeable, keeps you safe. Safe from rejection, safe from being cast out of the tribe. Your brain literally learned that your safety is tied to your utility, and that is a powerful rule running in the background of your operating system. So that little battle between yes and no isn't just a fleeting feeling. Nope. It's a symptom of a much bigger conflict raging inside your mind. And in this internal drama, there are 2 main characters who are almost never on the same page.
Okay, so imagine your brain is a company. On one hand, you've got the CEO. That's your prefrontal cortex. The CEO is all about big picture stuff, building a legacy, dreaming about the future. But then you've got the security guard, your amygdala. The security guard has one job and one job only: scan for threats and keep you safe. And you know what looks like a threat to the security guard? Failure, rejection, disapproval. So while your CEO is trying to launch a bold new project, your security guard is screaming, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, just say yes to that small favor so nobody gets upset."
And this constant war between your ambitious inner CEO and your terrified inner security guard, that has a name: neural dissonance. It's a state where your own system is literally fighting itself. Your ambition is pulling you forward, but your fear is slamming on the brakes. The result is a massive amount of internal friction, static, and, you guessed it, stress.
To put it in engineering terms, your brain becomes a system with high entropy. Think of an old, inefficient engine. A ton of the fuel it burns is just wasted as heat instead of being converted into motion. That heat is exactly what neural dissonance is. It's all your mental energy getting burned up in this internal conflict, leaving you with very little power left to actually move forward.
So, all this wasted energy, this internal friction, what's the real-world cost? Well, it has a very real effect on us, and it's called cognitive drag.
Cognitive drag is what happens when that internal friction takes a simple task, like answering an email, and makes it feel 10 times harder than it should. It's the reason you can get to the end of a day feeling completely exhausted, even if your to-do list looks untouched. You haven't been lazy, you've been at war with yourself all day long.
The best way to describe it is like this. It's like you're trying to walk through deep, thick mud. Every single step takes a monumental effort. You're trying to move forward, you really are. But your own internal environment is actively working against you, pulling you back, slowing you down to a crawl. That is cognitive drag.
Now, when we feel stuck in that mud, what's our first instinct? To push harder, right? We download a new productivity app, we make more lists, we try to force ourselves to get things done. But here's the thing, this almost never works. It's because society has installed this kind of standard human software in all of us. And the default program says if output is low, the only solution is to increase the input, your effort. We're told to just grind it out, to hustle, to power through. But that advice completely, totally ignores the fact that we're standing in mud up to our waists. And this slide really breaks it down. On one side, you have the flawed approach, just stomp on the gas pedal. All that does is spin your wheels faster and dig you even deeper into the mud. But on the other side is the systemic approach. This one understands the problem isn't your engine, it's the terrain. You have to fix the internal architecture first before you can get anywhere.
This is probably the most important metaphor of all. You can be the most brilliant pianist on earth with the most beautiful music in your soul. But if the piano itself is horribly out of tune, all you're going to create is noise. And pushing harder on the keys, playing with more force, doesn't fix it. In fact, it just makes the awful sound even louder. So you see, the big realization here is that we've been focused on the wrong thing entirely. The goal isn't to become a better piano player through sheer brute force. The goal is to first tune the instrument. Let that just sink in for a second. You don't need more effort. All that guilt you feel for not trying hard enough, it might be completely misplaced. When you're in a state of neural dissonance, more effort isn't the solution. It's actually part of the problem.
What you really need to do is reduce that internal friction. You need to get your inner CEO and your inner security guard to finally sit down at the same table and agree on a mission. The whole goal is to stop the internal parts from fighting each other, to remove the resistance that's holding you back.
So, before you try to play your masterpiece, before you launch that business or write that book, or even just try to get through your to-do list, the very first, most critical step is to tune the piano. You have to resolve that internal dissonance so that when you do act, all of your energy is focused, aligned, and powerful.
And that's really the idea I want to leave you with. What if, instead of trying to drown out that feeling of being stuck with more hustle and more noise, you just paused for a second? What if you actually listened to that conflict inside of you? Because maybe, just maybe, that dissonance isn't a sign that you're failing. Maybe it's a signpost, pointing you directly to what desperately needs to be put back in tune.
All right, today we're going to talk about something I think a lot of us deal with, this trap of being a people pleaser. But more importantly, we're going to look at a way out of that trap, a state of mind that turns all that internal chaos into, well, peak performance. I mean, just think about it for a second. Have you ever done that? Said yes when every single part of you is just screaming no? It's that knee-jerk yes that just pops out, and then boom, that awful sinking feeling of regret, and you're just mad at yourself. Okay, let's really get into this, because this isn't just some awkward little moment, right? For so many people, it's this constant, absolutely exhausting tightrope walk. And this is such a perfect way to put it. You feel like you're desperately trying to balance everyone's expectations, and you just know that one little no could send the whole thing crashing down. And this is where you see the real cost. It's this vicious cycle. You give that automatic yes, and that's not the end of it. Oh no, that's just the start of this slow burn resentment, which, by the way, just feeds that fear that you're not likable enough. But here's the thing. This goes way deeper. This isn't just about being nice or polite. No, this is actually a survival system that your brain has built. And this is such a critical way to reframe it. This is not a flaw in your character. It's a survival mechanism. It's basically a system that at some point learned a very powerful lesson. Your safety is directly tied to how useful you are to others. So when that system is in the driver's seat, what happens? Fear becomes the primary architect of your life. It's literally designing your choices, building your comfort zone, and telling you how to act, all to dodge that one thing it's terrified of: rejection. So what's the opposite of all that noise, all that constant internal debate? Well, there is an alternative. It's a state of high coherence, of real focus. You might have heard of it. It's called flow. And just look at the contrast here. It's night and day. The people pleaser's mind, that's high entropy. It's chaotic, it's noisy. The flow state mind, totally different. Low entropy, high coherence. This is the shift from being the worker who's driven by fear to becoming the system, which is driven by mastery. Huge difference. Okay, so how do we get there? It sounds amazing, right? But it's not some kind of magic trick. It's all about mechanics. So let's actually dig into the science, the cybernetics of how this shift really works. All right, so flow only happens in this really specific zone, this sweet spot. They call it the flow channel. The challenge of what you're doing has to be just right for your skill level. If it's too easy, you get bored. Too hard, you get anxious. It has to be that perfect balance where it demands everything you've got, but you actually have what it takes. And when you hit that perfect spot, something absolutely wild happens inside your brain. Your prefrontal cortex, the part that's always analyzing, criticizing, worrying about the future, that little voice of doubt, it just quiets down for a bit. The technical term for this is transient hypofrontality. Yeah, it's like the CEO of your brain just temporarily steps back. But here's the key. It's not stepping back because it's burned out or exhausted. It's stepping back because the system is running so efficiently, so perfectly, that it doesn't need to be micromanaged anymore. It's just working. You see, flow isn't just something that happens by accident. It's the reward you get for having a really disciplined neural OS, a well-run operating system in your brain. When everything is lined up, that's when your brain is cleared for takeoff. You're primed for that peak performance. So the big question is, what does it take to make this state more of a default setting? Well, it means you stop being just a passenger in your own mind, constantly reacting to whatever comes your way. Instead, You become the conductor. You're the one leading the orchestra. And it's an evolution, right? There are steps. You start out as the worker, kind of trapped by all that noise we talked about. Then you become the thinker, where you're actively working on the system, removing those bottlenecks. And finally, you become the system itself. You're just weaving patterns with the speed of thought. And at that highest level, when your whole mental architecture just clicks into place, something amazing happens. The line between you and the work, it just disappears. It dissolves. You're not doing a thing anymore. You and the thing you're doing are one. This is it. This is the refactored peak. And to someone watching, it might look supernatural. Like, how are they doing that so effortlessly? But you know the secret. It's not magic. It's just the result of getting rid of all that internal noise, all that friction that most people are still wrestling with every single day. So, it all comes down to this one question, really. Who is the architect of your life? Now that you understand a little more about how your own mind works, you have a choice. Are you going to let fear keep drawing the blueprints, or are you going to take the pencil yourself and start designing a life built for mastery? The choice is yours. All right, let's dive into something I think a lot of us know all too well. It's that feeling, that very specific moment where you hear the word yes coming out of your own mouth, while literally every part of your brain is just screaming, "Wait, no, what are you doing?" I mean, really think about that for a second. That question probably hits pretty close to home, right? It's this moment of intense internal tug of war that is just so incredibly common. It happens with your boss, your friends, even your family. And it's that one deeply uncomfortable moment that we're going to pull apart today. So let's start right at the scene of the crime, the exact moment that yes just sort of escapes. Because it's not really a decision you make, is it? It feels more like a reflex, this automatic, unconscious reaction that completely ignores what you actually want or need. And these three words, they just nail it. Reflexive because you feel like you have no control. Polite because that's the excuse, right? It's the social grease we use to keep things smooth. But devastating? Wow, that's the real gut punch. That word captures the internal damage that one single, polite word can do. Okay, so you've said the yes, but that's just the beginning of the problem. The real cost comes in the hours, sometimes days that follow. This is where you fall into what you could call the resentment trap. And here's the most important part to get. The person who asked you for the favor, they're not the bad guy here. Not really. That simmering, slow-burning anger is almost always pointed right back at yourself. You get mad at you for not being tougher, for not just saying what you really meant. Living like this puts you under constant pressure. It's like your whole life is this high-stakes balancing act. Every single request, every little interaction feels like another shaky step on this tightrope. And you're just desperately trying to keep everyone else happy so you don't fall. And man, is it exhausting. So we've talked about the what, the automatic yes, and that awful resentment that comes after. But to really get to the bottom of this, we have to look at the why. What's the engine that's actually driving this whole cycle? Well, it pretty much all boils down to one thing, a deep, primal fear of rejection. Now, that sounds incredibly dramatic, I know. But in that split second, that's what it feels like, doesn't it? The fear isn't just about letting someone down a little bit. It's this catastrophic belief that saying no will cause this tidal wave that completely destroys how they see you, leaving you stranded in this abyss of being unlikable. And what's so wild is that this huge existential fear of the abyss is often triggered by the smallest possible things, a potential frown, a tiny split-second flicker of disappointment in their eyes. Our brain takes these tiny little social cues and blows them up into these massive threats to our survival. Okay, so here's where we're gonna flip the script on this whole thing. What if this isn't some flaw in your character? What if you're not weak or just too nice? What if this whole people-pleasing thing is actually an old and frankly outdated survival mechanism? This completely changes how we can look at it. It stops being a personality trait and starts being what it really is, a defense system that's been wired into you. Your brain has learned a very simple but powerful equation. My usefulness equals my safety. If I'm helpful to others, I belong, I'm safe. If I'm not, I'm out. So this defense system is basically doing two big things. First, it's desperately trying to keep you from feeling the pain of being isolated, because way back when, for our ancestors, being kicked out of the tribe literally meant death. And second, it operates on this deep-seated belief that your value isn't a given. You have to earn it by being useful. Your yes is you constantly trying to prove your worth. And here's the kicker. When that survival instinct is running the whole show, it doesn't just affect the little things. It becomes the primary architect of your life. It designs your friendships, it picks your career path, it erases your boundaries. It literally builds the entire structure of your world around one single goal: avoiding anyone's disapproval. And that's exactly why we're not just going to sit here and tell you to be more assertive. That's like putting a fresh coat of paint on a house with a cracked foundation. Our approach is to go deeper. We have to understand the why first. We have to look at the faulty foundation that fear has built. Because the real answer isn't learning a new script or practicing a power pose in the mirror. No, the real breakthroughs happen when you're willing to look inward, to go into those quiet shadows of your mind where these fears and beliefs first took root. That is where the real work happens. So I'll leave you with this one final, really important question to think about. If your automatic yes is a deep, primal instinct trying to keep you safe, what is the danger that your no represents? What is the absolute catastrophe you believe is waiting for you on the other side of that tiny two-letter word? The answer to that question, well, that's the key to everything.